Christmas morning should smell like coffee and cinnamon rolls. Instead, mine smelled like betrayal and expensive lawyer cologne. I'm Dave Holt, 37 years old, owner of a small but growing software company called Data Flow Solutions. I write code that helps small businesses manage their inventory, not sexy, but it pays the bills and keeps me sane. Or it did until this morning. My wife Amanda sat across from our dining room table, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany surface. She'd always been beautiful. Shoulder-length blonde hair, sharp green eyes, the kind of smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. That smile had hooked me 8 years ago at a Boston law firm mixer. Now it looked predatory. Next to her sat Peter Lang, her boss from Whitman and Associates. 41 years old, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had that smug expression rich guys get when they think they're about to win something big. "Dave," Amanda said, her voice honey-sweet with an undertone of poison, "we need to talk." I sipped my coffee, watching them over the rim. Something was wrong, very wrong. Peter had never been to our house before, and certainly not on Christmas morning. Amanda's body language screamed nervous energy, like a cat ready to pounce. "Talk away," I said. "Though I have to say, Pete, this is kind of weird. Don't you have a family to spend Christmas with?" Peter's jaw tightened. "Actually, Dave, this concerns all of us." Amanda reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Thick, official looking. My stomach dropped. "What's that?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I knew. "Divorce papers," she said, sliding them across the table. "I've already signed them. You just need to add your signature." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. 8 years of marriage, reduced to legal documents on Christmas morning. I opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the contents. Standard divorce decree, but the financial terms made my blood run cold. "You're asking for half my company," I said. "Community property," Peter said smoothly. "Massachusetts law is very clear. Amanda contributed to your success during the marriage." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Contributed? She hasn't shown interest in my work since our second date. "Emotional support counts," Amanda said. "Plus, I've been handling our household finances, freeing you up to focus on business." That was rich. Amanda's idea of handling finances was spending money on designer handbags and spa treatments. I'd been managing our actual budget for years. I kept reading. The terms were brutal. Not only did she want half the company, she wanted alimony, the house, and most of our savings. I'd be left with basically nothing. "This is insane," I said. "You can't just—" "Actually, we can," Peter interrupted. "I've reviewed the paperwork personally. Everything's in order." The way he said "we" made something click. I looked between them, noticing details I'd missed before. Amanda's hand resting close to Peter's on the table, the way they kept glancing at each other. The fact that Peter was here at all. "How long?" I asked. "What?" Amanda's face flushed slightly. "How long have you two been sleeping together?" The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Peter straightened his tie, a nervous gesture I'd seen him do during tense client meetings. "That's not relevant," Peter finally said. "I think it's pretty damn relevant," I said, my voice rising. "My wife is divorcing me on Christmas morning with her boss present, asking for half my company. Yeah, I'd say the timeline of your affair is extremely relevant." Amanda found her voice. 6 months, she said quietly. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of her coming home late from work, of cold shoulders and mysterious phone calls. Half a year of me thinking I was going crazy, that maybe I was the problem in our marriage. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said, signing the papers with sharp, angry strokes. "I actually thought about getting you something nice for Christmas this year. A trip to Italy, maybe, but then I realized you'd probably just want to bring Peter along." I finished signing and slid the papers back across the table. Amanda's smile returned, triumphant and cruel. "Don't be bitter, Dave," she said. "This is better for everyone. You'll see." Peter leaned forward, and that's when he said the words that would haunt him forever. "Time to pay up, Dave. You've had a good run, but now it's time to pay up." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small wrapped box, a Christmas present I'd actually bought for Amanda weeks ago. Instead, I handed it to Peter. "What's this?" he asked. Early Christmas present, I said. Open it. Peter unwrapped the box with the enthusiasm of a man expecting expensive cufflinks or a watch. Instead, he found a USB drive. His face went pale as he read the small label stuck to it. Amanda and Peter, the greatest hits. Amanda leaned over to look. What is that? Peter's hands were shaking now. Where did you get this? I smiled for the first time that morning. You know, Pete, for a lawyer, you're pretty sloppy with digital security. Did you know Amanda's work laptop automatically backs up to the cloud? And that she gave me the password 2 years ago when she needed me to fix her email? The color drained from Amanda's face. You've been spying on me? Spying? No. But when my wife starts working late every night and her laptop starts showing deleted files with your name on them, I get curious. Amazing what people think they can permanently delete these days. Peter was staring at the USB drive, like it might explode. What's on here? Oh, emails about your weekend getaways, photos from that hotel in Cambridge, financial documents showing how you two plan to bankrupt my company and buy it for pennies on the dollar. Really romantic stuff. Amanda's triumphant smile had completely vanished. We never what? Never planned to destroy my business? Never talked about how stupid Dave would never see it coming? Never discussed how you'd split the profits once you drove data flow into the ground? I stood up, enjoying the way they both flinched. Here's the thing about being married to a software developer, Amanda. I know computers, I know networks, I know exactly how to recover deleted files, how to trace digital breadcrumbs, and how to build a very comprehensive case. Peter was studying the divorce papers now with the desperate intensity of a man looking for a life preserver. These documents are still legally binding, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Oh, absolutely, I agreed. I signed them fair and square, but here's what's interesting. Massachusetts law has some pretty strict rules about disclosure during divorce proceedings. Hiding assets, planning financial sabotage, things like that. Tends to void agreements when one party is acting in bad faith. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Merry Christmas, you two. Oh, and Amanda, you might want to start looking for a new job. Something tells me Whitman and Associates won't be too happy when they find out their senior partner has been using company resources to plan corporate sabotage. As I left the room, I heard Peter whisper urgently to Amanda, You need to start begging, now. But I was done listening to either of them. The next few days passed in a blur of lawyers, phone calls, and the kind of bitter clarity that comes after a major betrayal. I'd moved into the guest bedroom while Amanda and I figured out living arrangements, but the house felt like a minefield. Every shared space crackled with tension. My business partner Rachel Chen arrived at my home office on December 28th, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression of someone ready for war. Rachel and I had built data flow solutions from nothing 3 years ago. She handled marketing and client relations while I focused on development. More importantly, she was one of the few people I trusted completely. Okay, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Tell me everything. I'd already given her the basic story over the phone, but now I laid out the full scope of Amanda and Peter's betrayal. Rachel listened without interruption, her dark eyes growing angrier with each detail. Those fools, she said when I finished. They really thought they could destroy our company? Gets worse, I said, pulling up files on my computer. Look at this. I showed her the recovered emails between Amanda and Peter. The plan was more sophisticated than I'd initially realized. Peter had been feeding Amanda inside information about Dataflow's clients, looking for vulnerabilities. They'd identified 3 major accounts that were up for renewal in January, planning to poach them through Peter's connections. The most damaging email was from Amanda to Peter, dated just 2 weeks ago. Dave's so focused on the new inventory module, he has no idea what's coming. By February, Dataflow will be hemorrhaging clients and desperate for a buyout. That's when your investment group swoops in. Investment group? Rachel asked. Peter's been putting together a consortium of lawyers and businessmen. They plan to buy Dataflow for maybe 20% of its actual value once they'd sabotaged it into near bankruptcy. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. They have no idea who they're messing with, do they? That was the thing about Rachel. She looked like a typical marketing professional. Stylish clothes, friendly demeanor, the kind of person who could charm clients over lunch. But she'd grown up in a rough neighborhood in Dorchester, and she had a ruthless streak when it came to protecting what was ours. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I'd been thinking about that for days. The smart thing would be to take the evidence to my lawyer, file for divorce on grounds of fraud, and try to salvage my business. Clean, legal, boring. But I wasn't feeling smart. I was feeling angry. "I want them to suffer," I said. "Not just lose, suffer. I want them to understand what it feels like to have everything you've built ripped away by people you trusted." Rachel nodded approvingly. "Now you're talking my language. What's the plan?" Over the next 2 hours, we outlined a strategy that was part business warfare, part psychological torture. The beauty of it was that everything we planned was perfectly legal, just ruthless. Step 1 was protecting our existing clients. I spent the afternoon calling our major accounts, ostensibly for routine year-end check-ins. During each conversation, I casually mentioned that we'd heard rumors of competitors trying to poach clients with insider information, and that we wanted to make sure everyone was happy with our service. The response was immediate and gratifying. Not only did all 3 targeted clients renew their contracts early, but 2 of them upgraded their service packages. By the end of the day, Dataflow's revenue projections for the next quarter had increased by 30%. Step 2 was more personal. That evening, I drove to Peter's neighborhood in Brookline. He lived in a restored Victorian mansion worth at least $2 million, complete with a circular driveway and professionally landscaped gardens. His silver BMW sat in the driveway like a monument to his success. I didn't do anything that night, just observed. But I made note of his routines, his schedule, his habits. Peter Lang was a creature of habit, and habits could be exploited. The next morning, I got up early and drove to Amanda's law firm. Whitman and Associates occupied 3 floors of a downtown Boston high-rise, all glass and steel and intimidating leather furniture. I knew Amanda's schedule by heart. She always arrived at exactly 8:15 a.m., grabbed coffee from the lobby cafe, and took the elevator to the 15th floor. I waited in the lobby, reading a newspaper and watching. At 8:16 a.m., Amanda emerged from the elevator, looking harried. She was talking rapidly on her phone, her voice carrying across the marble lobby. "No, Peter, we can't wait," she was saying. "If Dave's already recovered the files, we need to move faster. Can your people accelerate the timeline?" She paused, listening. "I don't care if it's risky. We're past the point of playing it safe. Just make the calls and get those clients to jump ship. We'll deal with the fallout later." She hung up and headed for the cafe. I folded my newspaper and left, having heard exactly what I needed. That afternoon, I made another call, this one to my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski. She was 78 years old, had lived on our street for 40 years, and knew everyone's business better than the FBI. "Mrs. K," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course, dear," she said. "What's troubling you? Have you seen anyone unusual around my house lately? Cars that don't belong? People who seem out of place?" There was a pause. "Well, now that you mention it, there was something odd last week. A black sedan parked across the street for several hours on Tuesday night. I thought maybe it was someone visiting the Hendersons, but they were out of town." My blood ran cold. "What kind of sedan?" "Expensive looking. Lincoln, maybe?" "The driver never got out, just sat there watching your house. I almost called the police, but then he left around midnight." After hanging up, I sat in my office staring at the wall. Amanda and Peter weren't just planning to steal my business. They were having me watched. The scope of their betrayal was even larger than I'd imagined, but 2 could play that game. I called Rachel back. "Change of plans," I said. "We're not just going to beat them. We're going to destroy them." "I'm listening," she said. "How do you feel about hiring a private investigator?" Her laugh was sharp and predatory. "I feel great about it. I know just the guy." By the end of the week, we'd retained Marcus Sullivan, a former Boston police detective who now ran a small but effective private investigation firm. Marcus was in his 50s, built like a linebacker, and had the kind of world-weary competence that came from 20 years of dealing with the worst humanity had to offer. "Infidelity cases are bread and butter," he told us during our first meeting. "But what you're describing sounds more like corporate espionage. That's a whole different level of fun." Marcus laid out his plan. He'd conduct surveillance on both Amanda and Peter, documenting their affair and gathering evidence of their business conspiracy. More importantly, he'd investigate Peter's investment group and find out exactly who was involved in the planned takeover of Dataflow. Give me 2 weeks, Marcus said. I'll have enough evidence to bury both of them so deep they'll need archaeology to find their careers. As we shook hands, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Christmas morning. Hope. Not just hope for survival, but hope for victory. Amanda and Peter had made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed I was just a passive sufferer, someone who would roll over and accept defeat. They had no idea that I was about to become their worst nightmare. Time to pay up indeed. Marcus Sullivan worked fast. Within a week, he'd compiled a dossier that would make the FBI jealous. Rachel and I met him at a small cafe in Cambridge to review his findings, and what he'd discovered was even worse than we'd suspected. Your wife and her boss aren't just having an affair, Marcus said, sliding a thick folder across the table. They're running a full-scale operation. Peter's investment group includes 4 other lawyers, 2 real estate developers, and a venture capitalist. They call themselves the Acquisition Collective, and data flow isn't their first target. I opened the folder to find surveillance photos, financial documents, and transcripts of recorded conversations. The photos showed Amanda and Peter at various hotels and restaurants around Boston, clearly intimate. But the financial documents were what made my hands shake with rage. They've done this before? Rachel asked. 3 times in the past 2 years, Marcus confirmed. They identify small, successful companies with vulnerable ownership structures. Peter's wife or one of his associates gets close to a key figure, usually through seduction or friendship. Then, they gather inside information and systematically sabotage the business until the owners are forced to sell. I studied a spreadsheet showing the profits from their previous schemes. Conservative estimate, they'd stolen over $4 million from their sufferers. What happened to the people they targeted? I asked. Marcus's expression darkened. One guy lost his house and declared bankruptcy. Another had a nervous breakdown and spent 6 months in therapy. The third relocated to Florida and started over from scratch. These people don't just steal money. They destroy lives. Rachel was reading through the transcripts, her face getting redder by the minute. Listen to this, she said. This is Peter talking to someone named Vincent Carrera. The husband's a typical tech nerd, completely oblivious. Amanda has him wrapped around her finger. By the time he realizes what's happening, we'll own everything he's built. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just a business target to them. I was a joke, a pathetic figure they could manipulate and discard. There's more, Marcus said. They've been planning this for over a year. Amanda didn't start the affair because she fell out of love with you. She started it because Peter recruited her specifically to get close to you and your business. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd thought possible. My entire marriage, at least the last year of it, had been a lie designed to rob me of everything I'd worked for. But along with the pain came something else. Cold, calculating fury. What's our next move? I asked. Marcus smiled grimly. We make their lives hell, legally, of course. The plan he outlined was beautiful in its simplicity. Rather than confront them directly, we'd use their own tactics against them. Marcus would continue surveillance, while Rachel and I worked to expose the Acquisition Collective to their previous sufferers and the authorities. But first, we had some immediate scores to settle. That night, I drove to the parking garage where Peter kept his BMW. The building had security cameras, but I'd spent enough time in the area to know their blind spots. I didn't damage the car. That would be illegal. Instead, I did something much more creative. I'd bought 50 pounds of fresh fish from Boston Harbor that morning, along with several bottles of fish sauce and liquid fertilizer. The combination, when properly applied to a car's ventilation system, creates an odor that's nearly impossible to remove. I also left a small gift on his windshield, a printed copy of one of his more incriminating emails, along with a note that read, "Time to pay up." The next morning, I got a call from Rachel. She was laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Turn on Channel 7, she managed. "You have to see this." I switched on the news to find a reporter standing outside Peter's law firm. The chyron read, "Prominent attorney's car vandalized with mysterious message." Peter Lang, senior partner at Whitman and Associates, discovered his vehicle covered in what witnesses describe as the worst smell in human history, the reporter said. Along with the odorous prank, someone left a cryptic message reading, "Time to pay up." Police are investigating, but Lang declined to comment on what the message might mean. The camera cut to a brief shot of Peter emerging from the building, his face red with rage and embarrassment. He spotted the news crew and quickly ducked back inside. My phone rang. It was Amanda. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said calmly. "Don't lie to me. You did something to Peter's car." "Amanda, I've been home all evening working on code. You can check my computer logs if you want. Besides, why would I care about Peter's car?" She hung up on me, but not before I heard Peter shouting in the background. Round one to me. But Peter wasn't going to take the humiliation lying down. That afternoon, he showed up at my house, unannounced, his expensive suit wrinkled and his silver hair disheveled. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door. "Do we? 'Cause I'm pretty busy." He pushed past me into the living room, his face flushed with anger. "You think you're clever, don't you?" "I think I'm a lot of things, Pete. Clever is probably one of them." "This ends now," he said, jabbing his finger at my chest. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends now." I looked down at his finger, then back at his face. "You know what's funny? A week ago, I would have been intimidated by you. Rich lawyer, fancy suit, all that authority. But now I know what you really are." "And what's that?" "A parasite. A bottom feeder who destroys other people's lives for profit. You're not successful. You're a thief with a law degree." His face went white with rage. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually, I do. Marcus Sullivan is very thorough." The mention of Marcus's name hit him like a slap. His eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw real fear. "That's right," I continued. "I know about the Acquisition Collective. I know about your previous sufferers. I know about Vincent Carrera and the real estate deals. I know everything." Peter took a step back, his bravado crumbling. "You can't prove anything." "Can't I? How much do you want to bet?" He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked toward the door. But before leaving, he turned back with a look of pure malice. "You have no idea what you've started," he said. "You think this is over? This is just the beginning." After he left, I called Marcus immediately. "Peter just threatened me," I said. "How worried should I be?" "Very," Marcus said without hesitation. "These people don't just roll over when they're exposed. They fight back. They don't fight fair. You need to be careful." That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. Every car that drove past seemed suspicious. But along with the fear came determination. Peter and Amanda had made this personal long before I'd fought back. Now they were about to learn what happened when you targeted someone with nothing left to lose. The war was just beginning. The next morning brought news that made my blood run cold. Rachel called at 6 a.m., her voice tight with panic. "Dave, someone broke into our office last night." I was dressed and in my car within minutes, racing downtown through early morning traffic. Data Flow Solutions occupied a small suite on the third floor of a converted warehouse in the Fort Point district. When I arrived, I found Rachel standing outside with 2 police officers and a security guard. "What did they take?" I asked. "That's the weird part," Officer Martinez said, consulting his notepad. "Nothing obvious. No computers missing, no cash from petty funds, but someone definitely went through your files." Rachel led me inside. The office looked like a tornado had hit it. File cabinets were open, papers scattered across the floor, desk drawers pulled out and dumped. But Officer Martinez was right. All our expensive equipment was still there. "They were looking for something specific," Rachel said. "Client files, maybe, or financial records." I knew exactly what they'd been looking for. Evidence of our counter-investigation. The question was whether they'd found it. I checked my computer first. Password protected and encrypted, but that wouldn't stop a determined professional. However, I'd learned from my marriage to never trust important data to a single location. Everything crucial was backed up to multiple cloud servers, and the most sensitive files were stored on encrypted drives I kept at home. "Did they get anything?" Rachel asked quietly while the police finished their report. "Not the important stuff," I said, "but this confirms what Marcus warned us about. They're not going to play nice." After the police left, I called Marcus. He arrived within the hour, surveying the damage with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen plenty of crime scenes. "Professional job," he said. "They knew what they were doing. No forced entry, which means they either picked the lock or had a key." "How would they get a key?" "Same way they got information about your business in the first place. Inside help." The implication hit me like a brick. "You think Amanda, I think your wife has had access to your office, your files, your passwords for years." Even if you change the locks after Christmas, she might have made copies. I felt sick. The violation went beyond infidelity or business sabotage. Amanda had been systematically gathering intelligence on me for months, maybe longer. There's something else, Marcus said. I've been tracking Peter's associates, and they're getting nervous. Vincent Carrera met with 2 other men yesterday at a restaurant in the North End. One of them looked like Muscle. Muscle? The kind of guys you hire when legal intimidation isn't enough. Rachel and I exchanged glances. This was escalating beyond corporate warfare into something potentially dangerous. What do you recommend? I asked. Document everything, stay in public places, and consider getting a restraining order, Marcus said. Also, we need to move faster on exposing them. The longer we wait, the more desperate they'll get. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of playing defense, I was going to take the fight directly to them. I started with Peter's wife. Catherine Lang was everything Amanda wasn't. Understated, elegant, genuinely kind. She volunteered at children's charities, served on museum boards, and had been married to Peter for 15 years. According to Marcus's research, she had no idea about her husband's affairs or his criminal business activities. I felt terrible about what I was going to do to her, but she deserved to know the truth. I called her that evening, identifying myself as a business associate of Peter's who needed to discuss an urgent matter. We agreed to meet for coffee the next morning at a cafe in Harvard Square. Catherine was exactly as I'd expected. Gracious, well-dressed, with the kind of poise that came from years of being a lawyer's wife. She ordered tea while I got coffee, and we made small talk about the weather and holiday plans. So, she said finally, what did you want to discuss about Peter's work? I pulled out a manila envelope and set it on the table between us. Mrs. Lang, what I'm about to show you is going to be very difficult, but I think you have a right to know. Her smile faded. What are you talking about? Your husband is having an affair with my wife. They're also involved in a criminal conspiracy to defraud small businesses. The color drained from her face. That's impossible. I opened the envelope and showed her the surveillance photos. Catherine stared at them for a long moment, her hands trembling slightly. How long? She whispered. At least 6 months with my wife, but there have been others. I showed her the financial documents Marcus had compiled, explaining the acquisition collective and their previous sufferers. With each piece of evidence, Catherine seemed to shrink into herself. I'm sorry, I said. I know this is horrible, but no. Her voice was stronger now, anger replacing shock. Thank you for telling me. I've suspected something was wrong for months, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. She studied the photos again, her jaw tightening. What are you going to do with this information? Expose them. All of them. They've destroyed too many lives. Catherine nodded slowly. What can I do to help? I hadn't expected that response. You want to help? Mr. Holt, my husband has been lying to me for years while stealing from innocent people. He's made me an unwitting accomplice by using our social connections to identify targets. Yes, I want to help. Over the next hour, Catherine provided information that even Marcus hadn't been able to uncover. Names of other potential sufferers, details about Peter's financial arrangements, and most importantly, evidence of his criminal activities stored in their home safe. He keeps backup files of everything, she said. Insurance, he calls it, in case his partners try to betray him. By the time we parted, we'd outlined a plan that would give us access to Peter's most closely guarded secrets. Catherine would copy the files from their home safe while Peter was at work, then meet us the next evening to turn over the evidence. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. Peter and Amanda were desperate. And desperate people did dangerous things. That night, I made sure all my doors and windows were locked, set the security system, and kept my phone close. Outside, a black sedan sat parked across the street, the same type of car Mrs. Kowalski had described. They were watching me, waiting for their next move. But I was ready for them. The black sedan was still there when I woke up the next morning. I called Marcus immediately. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, I said, peering through my bedroom curtains. What does that mean? It means they're past the point of subtlety, Marcus replied grimly. When surveillance becomes obvious, it's usually because they want you to know you're being watched. Psychological pressure. Is it working? Are you scared? I considered the question honestly, terrified but also angry enough that I don't care. Good. Fear keeps you alive, anger keeps you fighting. We meet Catherine tonight as planned. The day passed slowly. I worked from home, partly for security and partly because I couldn't concentrate on anything except the evening's plan. Rachel called every few hours to check on me, and I could hear the tension in her voice. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. It was Amanda. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "I think we've said everything we need to say. Dave, please. This has gone too far. People are going to get hurt." "People are already hurt, Amanda. You made sure of that." There was a long pause. "What do you want?" "Money? I can get you money." The desperation in her voice was almost satisfying. Almost. "I want you to confess," I said, "publicly, all of it. The affair, the business conspiracy, the previous sufferers. I want you and Peter to turn yourselves into the authorities. You know we can't do that. Then we don't have anything to talk about." "Dave." I hung up. At 6 p.m., I left for my meeting with Catherine Lang. The black sedan followed me, maintaining a careful distance. I drove through downtown Boston, taking a circuitous route to make sure they couldn't predict my destination. Catherine was waiting at a small restaurant in the back bay, looking nervous but determined. She had a briefcase with her, which she clutched tightly as I approached. "Did you get them?" I asked, and then she nodded. "Everything. Financial records, correspondence, even recordings of some meetings. Peter's more paranoid than I realized." I opened the briefcase to find dozens of files, USB drives, and what looked like professional surveillance equipment. The scope of Peter's criminal enterprise was staggering. "There's something else," Catherine said. "I overheard a phone call this morning. Peter was talking to someone about accelerating the timeline and taking care of the problem directly." My blood ran cold. "What kind of problem?" "You, I think. He mentioned your name specifically." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Emergency, office break-in again, come now." I showed Catherine the message. "I have to go." "I'm coming with you," she said. "That's not safe. Neither is going alone. Besides, if Peter's involved, I want to see it." We drove to the Dataflow offices in separate cars, the black sedan still following me. The building seemed quiet, but there were lights on in our third-floor suite. The elevator ride up felt endless. When the doors opened, I could hear voices coming from our office. Amanda's voice, and Peter's, and at least one other person I didn't recognize. Catherine and I approached carefully. The office door was open and I could see 3 figures inside. Amanda and Peter, plus a large man in a dark suit who was systematically destroying our computer equipment with a baseball bat. "Make sure you get the servers," Peter was saying. "We can't leave any evidence." That's when I made my mistake. Instead of calling the police immediately, I stepped into the doorway. "Having fun?" I asked. All 3 of them spun around. Amanda gasped. Peter's face went white. The man with the baseball bat, Vincent Carrera, I assumed, just smiled. "Dave," Peter said, trying to recover his composure, "you're just in time to watch your little company disappear. Actually, I'm just in time to watch you commit felony destruction of property in front of witnesses." I held up my phone, which had been recording since I'd entered the building. Behind me, Catherine was doing the same thing. Vincent stepped forward, still holding the bat. "Give me the phones." "I don't think so." That's when everything went wrong. Vincent swung the bat at my head. I ducked, but he caught me in the shoulder, sending me spinning into the wall. Catherine screamed. Amanda shouted something I couldn't understand over the ringing in my ears. I tried to get up, but Vincent was already moving toward Catherine. She backed toward the elevator, still holding her phone. "Stop!" Peter yelled. "This wasn't the plan." But Vincent wasn't listening to Peter anymore. He grabbed Catherine's wrist, trying to get her phone. She fought back, scratching at his face. That's when the elevator doors opened, and Marcus Sullivan stepped out, followed by 2 police officers. "Boston police! Everyone freeze!" The next few minutes were chaos. Vincent tried to run but tripped over the destroyed computer equipment. Peter attempted to destroy evidence by throwing files out the window. Amanda just stood there, looking stunned. When the dust settled, all 3 of them were in handcuffs. I was bleeding from my shoulder but conscious. Catherine was shaken but unharmed. "How did you know to come here?" I asked Marcus. "I've been tracking Vincent all day," he said. "When he headed to your office with Peter and Amanda, I figured they weren't planning a friendly visit." Officer Martinez, the same cop who'd investigated the first break-in, shook his head as he surveyed the damage. "Mr. Holt, you should have called us instead of confronting them yourself." "You're absolutely right," I said. "But I got it all on video." I showed him the recording on my phone. Clear footage of Vincent destroying property while Peter and Amanda directed him. Combined with Catherine's evidence and Marcus's investigation, it was more than enough to put all of them away for a long time. As they were led away in handcuffs, Amanda looked back at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she said. "No," I replied. "You're not. But you will be." Peter didn't say anything, but the look he gave me promised that this wasn't over. He was wrong about that, too. The trial of Amanda Holt, Peter Lang, and Vincent Carrera became the biggest legal story in Boston that spring. The media dubbed them the Acquisition Collective, and their systematic fraud of small businesses made headlines for weeks. I testified for 3 days, walking the jury through the evidence Marcus had gathered and the recordings Catherine and I had made. The prosecution had built an airtight case: conspiracy, fraud, extortion, destruction of property, an attack. Amanda's defense attorney tried to paint her as a sufferer of Peter's manipulation. But the recovered files from their affair told a different story. Email after email showed her eagerly participating in the planning, even suggesting new ways to sabotage data flow. Peter's lawyer went with a different strategy, claiming that everything had been Vincent's idea, that Peter was just a lawyer who'd gotten in over his head. But Catherine's testimony destroyed that defense. She'd provided recordings of Peter bragging about previous sufferers, planning new schemes, and directing Vincent's criminal activities. Vincent himself never took the stand. His lawyer advised him to take a plea deal: 10 years for attack and destruction of property, in exchange for testimony against Peter and Amanda. The most dramatic moment came when Catherine testified about discovering her husband's crimes. She spoke quietly but clearly, describing years of lies and manipulation. When Peter's lawyer tried to attack her credibility, she simply said, "I loved my husband for 15 years. I would have done anything for him. But I won't lie to protect a criminal." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Amanda: guilty on all counts, sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Peter: guilty on all counts, it's sentenced to 12 years in federal prison plus restitution to all sufferers. Vincent: 10 years as agreed in his plea deal. But the criminal convictions were just the beginning. The civil lawsuits came next. Catherine and I had formed an alliance with Peter's previous sufferers, and together we sued the Acquisition Collective for damages. The settlement was substantial enough to compensate everyone who'd been hurt, plus punitive damages that would ensure none of them could profit from their crimes even after prison. More satisfying than the money was watching their reputations crumble. Whitman and Associates fired Peter and settled with their insurance company to avoid further liability. Amanda was disbarred. Their social circle evaporated overnight. But the sweetest revenge came 6 months after the trial ended. I was working late at Dataflow's new offices. We'd expanded to an entire floor of a downtown building when Rachel knocked on my door. "There's someone here to see you," she said with a mysterious smile. I looked up to find Catherine Lang standing in my doorway, holding a bottle of champagne and wearing the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since we'd met. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. "The divorce is final," she said. "Peter signed over everything rather than drag it out in court. The house, the investments, even his precious BMW. We opened the champagne and toasted to new beginnings. Catherine had started a nonprofit organization to help small business owners protect themselves from fraud. I donated both money and software to support her work. "Any regrets?" she asked. I thought about it seriously. The past year had been the most difficult of my life, but also the most clarifying. "None," I said. "What about you?" "Only that it took me so long to see who Peter really was." We talked for another hour about the future. Catherine was considering law school. She wanted to prosecute white-collar criminals. I was developing new security software to help small businesses protect their data. As she was leaving, Catherine turned back with a question that surprised me. "Do you think they learned anything? Amanda and Peter, I mean. Do you think they understand what they did wrong?" I considered her question carefully. I'd received exactly one letter from Amanda since her sentencing. A rambling attempt at justification that blamed everyone except herself. "No," I said finally. "I don't think they're capable of understanding. They see themselves as sufferers of bad luck, not consequences of their choices." Catherine nodded sadly. That's what I thought too. After she left, I stayed in the office for another hour, looking out at the Boston skyline and reflecting on everything that had happened. A year ago, I'd been a naive husband who trusted his wife and believed that hard work and honesty were enough to succeed. The betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but it had also taught me valuable lessons about human nature, about protecting what matters, and about the importance of fighting back against people who prey on others. Dataflow Solutions was now 3 times larger than it had been before the attack, with new security measures and a reputation for integrity that attracted clients from across New England. Rachel and I had hired 6 new employees, including 2 former sufferers of the acquisition collective who'd lost their own businesses. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my heart stopped, old habits from the months of maltreatment and threats. But it was just my neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski. Saw the news about the sentencing. Good for you, dear. Justice served. Justice served indeed. I locked up the office and headed home, driving through the streets of Boston where Amanda and Peter had once planned my destruction. They were in federal prison now, their careers and reputations destroyed, their sufferers compensated, their crimes exposed. As I pulled into my driveway, the house was mine alone now, thanks to the divorce settlement. I thought about Peter's words on that Christmas morning, time to pay up. He'd been right about one thing. It had been time to pay up. He'd just been wrong about who would be doing the paying.